Hello slimy fertlers, and we're here again to do another video having a look at some sort of interesting stuff that I've come across. And yes, I have come across this one myself because my minions are far too fucking idle to find anything for me these days.
Go fuck yourself. Sunday is our day off, as it is the Lord's Day.
Well, I haven't seen you go near a church recently. And besides, the only Lord you should be worrying about pleasing is me.
Indeed. So, what do we have to work with today?
Well, apparently today is National Constitution Day or something like that in the colonies, and apparently Tariq Nasheed claims that he was going to list off all of the times where black people's constitutional privileges and rights were deliberately stepped on by the government in a series of tweets.
Wait, who the fuck is Tariq Nasheed?
Wash your ass, you got to wash your ass, you got to wash your ass.
Oh.
Something tells me all of our brains are going to implode.
Yeah, so today then, like I say, gangster rapper turned black supremacist stroke We Are Kangz advocate Tariq Nasheed, formerly known as K-Flex, decided that he was going to instruct all us cracker-ass crackers how evil we were by showing us that on Constitution Day how black people's constitutional rights and privileges were in fact trampled on by the government on numerous opportunities, as we can see from the tweet here. But I am, not really expecting much out of him. I mean, I would assume that he had, read the amendments that he's going to cite and would provide examples of such, well-researched and well-thought-out examples of instances where people's constitutional rights were indeed stepped on. I mean, that's not too much to ask, is it, really? I mean, really, come on, it's not too much to ask for a bit of background checking and research, is it?
I can already feel my brain beginning to hurt.
Okay, so for his first example, he states that the First Amendment rights of Gemma Lee Hill was, which that should actually be were violated, but was violated when the White House called for her to be punished for freedom of speech. Okay, so let's just take a look at the actual text of the First Amendment. The First Amendment reads, as adopted in 1791, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Okay then, for those of you who don't know, the situation being referred to here is the instance in which an ESPN sportscaster by the name of Gemma Lee Hill, or it might be Jamail or Jamail, I don't know, I'm probably mangling the pronunciation, but that's how it reads to me, basically went on Twitter and stated that Donald Trump was a white supremacist and that he surrounded himself with other white supremacists, basically implying that the entire upper echelons of the United States government were indeed white supremacists. Now, this is a very serious accusation to be made against a sitting president and his advisors and staff. So what happened was that Donald Trump took to his own Twitter I might add, not the official presidential Twitter, and stated that he believed that Gemma Lee Hill should be placed under some kind of disciplinary measures by her employer, which, like I say, I believe is ESPN. He did this because earlier a similar incident occurred where one of their male sportscasters, who just happened to be a white male, whereas Gemma Lee Hill is a black female, this male sportscaster made a libelous comment about someone on television, and in response to that the network immediately placed him on a disciplinary suspension for it. So basically what Donald Trump was asking for was that the network, basically in order to maintain consistency, do the same with Gemma Lee Hill, because Gemma Lee Hill has made a libelous comment about someone. This basically means that Tariq Nasheed is saying that because Donald Trump asked for someone to be disciplined in order for their employer to be consistent about who they apply censorship or punishments to, he's implying that because he asked for that, then this represents the White House, basically by the White House he means the state, requesting punishment for this woman. Now, in order for Tariq Nasheed to be able to substantiate this, this rather large and tall claim, he's going to need to provide at least one of the following. Number one, he will need to provide a signed executive order from Donald Trump stating that Gemma Lee Hill needs to have her First Amendment rights revoked and that she should be punished. Secondly, he will, or in absence of an executive order, number two, he could provide a copy of the legislation passed by Congress which states that Gemma Lee Hill needs to have her First Amendment rights revoked and be punished for what she said about Donald Trump and his staff. Now, I'm going to wait a little while for Tariq to provide this information.
You'll be waiting a long fucking time then, being as that didn't happen.
What? You mean Tariq is talking out of his arse?
Correct, it is 100% pure, unadulterated bullshit.
Okay then. Moving swiftly on, the second post he made states the following. The Second Amendment was violated when Philando Castile was executed for legally owning a gun and the NRA stayed silent. Okay, so we'll take a look at the Second Amendment. Here we go. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Basically, the state will not make any laws stopping people from owning firearms. Okay, so the incident being referred to here is the incident where two police officers stopped a car, and the car contained a woman, who was Philando Castile's girlfriend, a 4-year-old child, and Philando Castile himself. Now, the police officers had been tipped off that the male occupant of the car resembled a suspect that was currently wanted for a robbery that had happened earlier that day. And they stopped the car, and both the officers got out with their dash cam running, and one officer went to the driver's side of the car and one officer went to the passenger side of the car. Now, while the officer on the driver's side requested the license and insurance details from the driver, who was Castile's girlfriend, Castile himself announced to the officer that was stood outside the passenger side window that he was in possession of a firearm. The police officer said, okay, that's fine, please don't get it out. And what's shown then from the police car's dash cam is the police officer repeatedly instructing Castile not to produce the firearm, before then shooting his service pistol several times into the car. I believe that Philando Castile was shot 4 times in the left-hand side of his chest and arm, and the video footage taken by his girlfriend immediately after he was shot has since gone viral. Now, an investigation has been, or is being, as far as I'm aware, still conducted into what happened here, and both the police officers have been placed on administrative suspension while the investigation goes on. However, Tariq's point is that the police were attempting to enforce some sort of Second Amendment violation by withdrawing Philando Castile's right to own a firearm. This is demonstrably untrue, because basically the police were acting on a tip-off that someone who had been involved in a robbery earlier on that day and was possibly armed and dangerous had been seen in this car. They stopped it just to investigate whether the person in the passenger seat was indeed the man they were looking for, and the man informed them that he had a firearm, was instructed not to produce it in the presence of the police officers, but did so anyway, resulting in him being shot, and he eventually died from his gunshot wounds. This in no way represents the state revoking Philando Castile's, constitutional right to own and keep a firearm. What it represents is police responding to someone who is suspected to be an armed robber, producing a firearm and possibly wanting to use it in a threatening and lethal manner. The police officer actually acted as he'd been trained to. When you have a suspect, someone produces a gun when instructed not to, you have to assume that they're going to use that gun to attack and possibly kill, one or more people, more than likely the police officers present. So to make the statement that this is a constitutional violation is, once again, bullshit.
Also, the NRA not getting involved is irrelevant, being as that no attempt was made to violate anyone's constitutional rights. They obviously saw this, and therefore did not raise the issue, because they didn't need to. If they had, it would be the equivalent of claiming a First Amendment violation on behalf of someone that had recently died, therefore being stripped of their right to free speech and freedom to assemble, etc., etc. Fuck me, did Tariq not learn fucking basic reading comprehension or something?
Okay, so at this point, Tariq seems to get a little bit bored and starts skipping things. For example, he skips from the Second Amendment straight to the Fourth, missing out the Third. The Third Amendment is just basically a snippet which says that soldiers or forces of the military cannot commandeer people's houses or property during peacetime, except if given a direct legal instruction to do so. And he skips on to the Fourth Amendment by stating that the Fourth Amendment is violated by stop and frisk type procedures that are legally allowed to happen with black citizens. So basically what he's saying is that black people are stopped and searched while white people are not. Straight away I'm going to call this one a bullshit, because quite simply white people, black people, Hispanics, Asians, whatever, have all been stopped and searched at some point. Plus he does not provide any kind of example or citation for this happening. Okay, so he then moves on to the Fifth Amendment by stating that the Fifth Amendment states no one should be deprived of life, liberty or property without due process of law, but black people are executed by cops. So I'm just going to bring up a copy of the Fifth Amendment here, which as ratified in 1789 states that no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, where in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offence to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor deprived of life, liberty or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. The Fifth Amendment is basically the right not to self-incriminate and the right to due process. Now, Tariq's statement here is that black people are executed by cops. Now, to understand what an execution is basically where the state orders that an individual or group of individuals be put to death for a crime of some description. Now, the Fifth Amendment does not make provision for, basically the state applying a death penalty to someone. And the Fifth Amendment statement that no one shall be deprived of life, liberty or property without due process of law is rather a strange one, because if you are arrested for a crime, you are given the option of, depending on your crime, you are given the option of paying bail to be allowed not to be held in jail until your court date. And if you can't afford the bail, or you can't find anybody to pay the bail for you, then unfortunately you have to remain in custody until your day in court. That's life and liberty dealt with. Deprived of property, well, unfortunately the state doesn't seize your assets while you're awaiting trial. And, without due process of law, where this is a legal process, here are your options. You have access to legal counsel, and if you are able to do so, you are allowed to, be let out of jail to continue your life until your trial date, obviously depending on which crime you have committed. For some crimes they will not allow you to be let out of jail. But black people are executed by cops. What does that have to do with the Fifth Amendment? That has everything to do with police corruption, possible institutional racism, if it can be proved. It certainly has nothing to do with the Fifth Amendment.
Is your brain starting to ache yet, Master? I know mine is.
Yeah, it's becoming really mind-numbing, because it's quite obvious at this point that Tariq has literally no understanding whatsoever of what the amendments mean, nor their relation to the legal system which covers the entirety of the population of the United States of America. And I just think it's a bit sad, really, that someone who is a natural citizen of the United States of America understands the Constitution a lot worse than what somebody who is not a citizen of the United States does. I mean, here I am, a white English person, and I already understand the words 1,000 times better than what he does. Tariq goes on to make claims about the 6th, 8th, 13th and 14th Amendments, basically stating that they are designed and implemented in such a way that they undermine the black man, providing no proof whatsoever. It's by this point he's run out of proof. In particular, his statement regards to the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery and involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime, which he states criminalises blackness. Well, you heard it here, folks. Tariq Nasheed thinks that black people should be slaves and involuntary servants because the 13th Amendment criminalises blackness. Just let that sink in. Anyways, that's all I can deal with for the time being, so thank you for watching, and feel free to subscribe to me on here and on VidMe, as well as the other social contact details given on the card on screen. And if you wish, you can donate to my PayPal, any amount at all. All donations are received with thanks. And we'll see you next time.